Rosa's hand trembled as she held Eduardo Alistaire's arm in the church corridor. The organ was playing, 300 guests were waiting, and the bride already positioned at the altar was wearing a dress that cost more than Rosa would earn in 10 years of work. "Mr. Eduardo, you cannot marry her." Rosa's voice came out low, but firm. Her calloused fingers from cleaning the marble floors of the Alistair mansion gripped the fine fabric of his tuxedo. Eduardo turned his face, his icy blue eyes fixed on the maid who had been cleaning his house for 3 years. "Rosa? What the hell are you doing? I need to talk to you. Now." Tears began to run down her face, smudging the little makeup she had put on. "Please, trust me just this once." The murmurs began. People turning their heads. Eduardo's mother stood up from the first row, her face red with indignation. Victoria, the bride, remained motionless at the altar, her bouquet of white roses trembling slightly in her hands. "Have you gone crazy?" Eduardo tried to pull away, but Rosa held on tighter. She knew she had only seconds before the security guards dragged her away. 3 years serving that family. 3 years silent, observing, cleaning the secrets hidden under extremely expensive Persian rugs. "Victoria is deceiving you." The words came out in desperation. "I have proof. It's in my bag, in the dressing room. Just give me 5 minutes." Eduardo stopped. Something in Rosa's eyes made him hesitate. She had never asked for anything. Never interfered. She woke up at 5 in the morning, prepared breakfast, cleaned every room of that 22-bedroom mansion, and left at night without complaining about the salary that barely paid the rent of her tiny room on the outskirts. Security. Eduardo's mother's voice echoed through the church. 2 men in black suits began walking toward Rosa. 5 minutes, Rosa pleaded, tears now flowing freely. "I wouldn't do this if it weren't important. You have always been kind to me, always treated me like a person. I can't let this happen." Eduardo's heart beat erratically. Kind. He remembered the time he found Rosa crying in the kitchen because she didn't have money for her mother's medicine. He paid. He remembered when her coat tore in the winter and he gave her one of his. Small gestures that meant nothing to him, but meant everything to her. "Wait." Eduardo raised his hand, stopping the guards. Silence fell over the church like a heavy curtain. Victoria took a step forward at the altar, her expression changing from surprise to something Eduardo couldn't identify. "Eduardo, my love, what is happening?" Victoria's voice came out sweet, but there was tension in it. "Rosa, you have 3 minutes." Eduardo turned completely to the maid. "And this will decide whether you leave here with your job or with a restraining order." Rosa released his arm and ran. Her old shoes struck the marble floor as she crossed the side of the church toward the dressing room. Her heart pounded. She knew the risk. She knew she would probably lose everything. The job that supported her, her sick mother, and her 2 younger brothers. But the truth weighed too heavily. When she returned, she was carrying a battered bag. Her hands trembled so much that she almost dropped it. Eduardo was standing in the same place, the guests in absolute silence, all eyes fixed on that impossible moment. "Open it." Eduardo pointed to the bag. Rosa took a deep breath. Inside there was a brown envelope, crumpled at the edges. She worked 2 extra weeks, slept only 4 hours a night to pay the cheap private investigator she found on the internet. Every cent saved from the tips she occasionally received. 4 months ago, I was cleaning Mrs. Victoria's office at the mansion, Rosa began, her voice faltering. I found emails open on her computer. I didn't want to read them, but I saw your name. And then I saw other names. Many others. Eduardo took the envelope. His hands, used to signing million-dollar contracts, trembled as he opened it. Photos began to fall out. Printed emails. Messages. Each page a stab wound. Eduardo's face lost all color. He looked at Victoria, who was now stepping down from the altar, her dress dragging on the floor. "Eduardo, let me explain," Victoria began. "Are you going to give me an explanation for this?" Eduardo raised one of the photos. His voice came out strangled. "For this." Rosa felt her legs weaken. She did it. She really did it. There was no turning back. The murmurs exploded through the church. Eduardo's mother covered her mouth with her hands. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. Now let's continue, because what comes next will leave you speechless. Eduardo looked at Rosa, then at the photos in his hands, and back at Victoria. His world was collapsing. And all because of a maid who risked everything to save him. Victoria lifted the hem of her dress and walked toward Eduardo with calculated steps. Her face, once sweet and delicate, now showed a coldness he had never seen. Love, are you really going to believe a desperate maid? She probably made all this up because she's obsessed with you. Obsessed. Rosa felt anger rise in her throat. I barely talk to him. I just clean the house and leave. Exactly. Victoria turned to the guests, her voice loud and clear. An invisible maid who always wanted attention. What better moment to get it than by ruining my wedding? Eduardo looked at the photos again. Victoria in expensive restaurants with another man. Messages planning meetings. Bank transfers. And the worst of all, an email from her to someone named Thomas saying, just 6 more months married to this idiot and half the fortune is mine. The prenuptial agreement has loopholes my lawyer has already found. Explain this then. Eduardo showed the email, his hand trembling with contained anger. Explain this email to Thomas. The silence was absolute. Victoria looked at the paper and something changed in her eyes. The mask fell completely. You want the truth, Eduardo? The truth is that you are boring. Rich, but boring. You spend the whole day talking about business, stocks, investments. When was the last time you actually lived? The words cut deep. Eduardo felt all eyes on him. His mother began to cry softly. His best friend Patrick, who was standing as best man, took a step forward as if he were going to intervene, but stopped. I loved you, Eduardo said, and his voice broke in a way Rosa had never heard. 3 years together. 3 years planning this life. You loved the idea of me. Victoria threw the bouquet to the ground. The pretty model on your arm. The perfect wife for your boring business parties. You never really loved me, Eduardo. You collected me the way you collect your imported cars. Rosa saw Eduardo recoil as if he had been punched. She knew that look. It was the same one she saw in the mirror when her ex-boyfriend said she would never be anything more than a maid. The pain of realizing that maybe the person was right. But I was wrong about one thing. Victoria took one of the photos from Eduardo's hand. I underestimated the little maid. She turned to Rosa with a cruel smile. End up with women like you. They might think you're cute, they might even give you an extra tip at Christmas, but marry you? Never. Eduardo took a step forward. Enough, Victoria. Why? Because the truth hurts. Victoria was out of control now, her voice echoing through the church. I may be a gold digger, but at least I'm from the same world as you. Her. She pointed at Rosa with disdain. She cleans your dirt. That's all she'll ever do. Rosa felt something break inside her. Not because of the cruelty of the words, but because part of her feared Victoria was right. She looked at her simple dress, bought on sale. At her old shoes. At her rough hands from so much work. Get out of my church. Eduardo's voice came out low, dangerous. Now. Victoria blinked, surprised. What? You heard me. Eduardo stepped closer to her. Get out. And you can take your Thomas, your lawyer, and your plans with you. The prenuptial agreement you think has loopholes? It was reviewed yesterday by the best law firm in the country. You won't see a cent of my money. The lie came out so naturally that even Rosa believed it for a second. But she saw it in Eduardo's eyes. He was making it up, protecting what little dignity remained. You'll regret this. Victoria grabbed the hem of her dress. I'll sue you, sue her, sue this entire church. Do whatever you want. Eduardo turned his back on her. Security, escort the young lady out. The 2 men in suits approached. Victoria looked around, searching for allies, but found only looks of disapproval. Even her family, seated in the middle rows, avoided her gaze. This isn't over, Eduardo. Victoria screamed as she was escorted out. You'll see. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy your company, your reputation, everything. The church door closed with a dull thud. Silence returned, heavier than before. Eduardo stood still in the aisle, the photos still in his hand, surrounded by 300 people who had come to celebrate his wedding and were now witnessing his humiliation. Rosa took a step back, wanting to disappear. She had done what she had to do. Now it was time to leave, to return to her life, to her little room, to her reality. Rosa, wait. Eduardo's voice stopped her. She turned slowly. Eduardo was looking at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Gratitude? Confusion? Anger at her for exposing everything that way? Thank you, he said simply. 2 words that seemed insufficient for the earthquake that had just happened. Rosa only nodded and left through the side door. Her footsteps echoed in the empty corridor. She didn't cry. Not yet. First she needed to get home, lock the door, and then she could fall apart in peace. 2 weeks passed like a fog. Rosa did not return to the Alastair mansion. Not because she was fired, but because she didn't have the courage to show up. Every morning she woke up at 5, made coffee on the old stove in her little room, and wondered if she still had a job. The money was running out. Her mother needed medicine. Her brothers needed to eat. And she had used all her savings on that private investigator. Was it worth it? She no longer knew. On the 16th day, the doorbell rang. Rosa opened the door, expecting the landlord collecting rent. Instead, she found a man in a gray suit holding a leather briefcase. "Miss Rosa Mendez?" he asked formally. Her heart raced. Lawsuit. Victoria had sued her as promised. "Yes, that's me. I have a delivery from Mr. Eduardo Alastair." He handed her the briefcase. "And a message. He asks that you read it carefully." Rosa took the briefcase with trembling hands. The man left before she could ask anything. Inside were documents, many documents, and a handwritten letter. "Rosa, over the last 15 days, I investigated everything. Every word Victoria said, every lie she planted. You saved my life. Now let me save yours. Inside this briefcase is the deed to an apartment. 3 bedrooms, near a good hospital for your mother. It is in your name. There is also an employment contract, if you want it. Not as a maid. As a trusted consultant for my company. Someone who sees what others do not. The salary is specified. I know you will think it is a lot, but to me it is an investment. Honest people are rare. Think carefully. Eduardo." Rosa read it 3 times. Then 3 more. Her hands shook so much she almost tore the paper. An apartment. A real job. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. She picked up the phone, the same old device she had used for 5 years, and called the number on the card attached to the documents. Alastair Residence. The voice was the new maid's. "I need to speak to Mr. Eduardo. This is Rosa." Silence on the other end. Then hurried footsteps. Eduardo's voice came through clearly. "Rosa? You received it." "Mr. Eduardo, I can't accept this." Tears began to fall. "It's too much. It's far too much. You can and you will accept it." His voice was firm but kind. "Rosa, in that church, you risked everything. Your job, your safety, everything. Why? Because it was the right thing to do." "Exactly. And that is so rare that it's worth more than any apartment." Eduardo paused. Victoria was right about one thing. I collected people. I surrounded my life with beautiful and empty people. You showed me that real value has nothing to do with appearance or status. Rosa sat down on the floor, her back against the wall. "I just did what any decent person would do." No. Any decent person would have looked the other way. Would have thought about the salary, the security, the consequences. Eduardo sighed. "You thought about me. About a boss who barely talked to you. That's not ordinary decency. That's extraordinary courage." "People will talk," Rosa wiped her tears. "They'll say I set everything up. That I made up the evidence just to get your money. Let them talk." Eduardo's voice had a new lightness. "In the last 15 days, I discovered who my real friends are. Spoiler, there aren't many. Patrick, my best man, disappeared. Most of high society avoids me. They think I'm an idiot for having been deceived. I'm sorry. Don't be. I needed this cleansing. Eduardo laughed, a genuine sound. You know what's funny? I'm happier now than I've been in the last 3 years. Victoria was right about me being boring. I was. I lived on autopilot, doing what was expected. Rosa looked at the documents spread across the floor. And what changed? You. The answer came quickly. You showed me that real people still exist. That honesty still matters. That courage doesn't need money or power. A comfortable silence settled in. Rosa could hear his breathing on the other end. Is the apartment real? She asked softly. Completely. You can go see it today if you want. The keys are in the briefcase. And the job? Also real. But I don't want to pressure you. If you prefer to work somewhere else, I understand. The apartment is yours either way. No conditions. No strings attached. Rosa closed her eyes. This didn't happen to people like her. Good things didn't fall from the sky. There was always a price, always a catch. Why are you doing this? She needed to know. Because someone has to start doing what's right. Eduardo spoke slowly, choosing his words. My father built an empire by stepping on people. I continued that tradition without realizing it. I paid well, yes, but I never really saw people. You forced me to see. I didn't force anything. I just showed the truth. And that changed everything. Eduardo paused. Rosa, I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a chance. The same chance you gave me in that church. A chance to start over being honest. Rosa looked out the small window of the little room. Outside, rain was beginning to fall. Can I think about it? Of course. But think quickly. Your mother needs those medicines, and the hospital near the new apartment is much better. She smiled despite the tears. How do you know about the medicines? I have my resources. His voice carried a smile too. And Rosa? Thank you. Again. For everything. The call ended. Rosa remained sitting on the floor surrounded by papers that promised a new life. A life she had never imagined possible. And for the first time in weeks, she let the tears fall freely. But this time they were not from fear or sadness. They were from hope. Rosa accepted the apartment. She accepted the job. 3 months passed and she still woke up thinking she was dreaming. Her mother finally had proper treatment. Her brothers were studying at a decent school. And she worked in a glass office on the 22nd floor, analyzing contracts and people for Eduardo. It turned out she had a natural talent. She could read between the lines, notice when something was wrong. Eduardo said it was because she had spent years being invisible, observing without being seen. That Thursday, Rosa was reviewing a merger contract when the secretary rushed in. There's a woman at the reception. She says it's urgent. She says she knows you. Rosa's stomach sank before she even asked. Victoria. Her. Rosa went down to the reception. Victoria looked different. Her perfect hair was now tied in a simple ponytail. The expensive clothes replaced by jeans and a basic blouse. But her eyes were still the same. Cold. Calculating. Can we talk? Victoria asked without greeting her. They went to an empty meeting room. Rosa closed the door and crossed her arms. What do you want? I came to make you a proposal. Victoria sat down as if she were at home. 500,000 reis. In cash. You disappear from Eduardo's life. Rosa felt anger boil. Are you crazy? I'm desperate. Different. Victoria opened her bag and took out a thick envelope. Eduardo is suing me. He's going to take everything I have. My lawyers say the only chance is to prove that you forged the evidence. I didn't forge anything. I know. Victoria sighed. But if you say you did, if you sign a document saying that, my lawyers can use it. Eduardo will hate you, but you walk away rich. 500,000, Rosa. Think about what that means for you. Rosa looked at the envelope. 500,000 reis. It was more money than she would see in her entire life. She could invest, secure her brother's future, her mother's retirement. No, the word came out firm. Victoria tilted her head. You didn't even think. I don't need to think. Rosa pushed the envelope back. That evidence was real. You know it. I know it. And I'm not going to lie for money. How noble. Victoria laughed bitterly. The same honest little maid. Let me tell you what's going to happen, dear. Eduardo will get tired of you. Rich men always get tired. And when that happens, you'll go back to cleaning houses. But then it will be worse, because you'll have proven how good the life is that you'll never have again. Maybe. Rosa stood up. But at least I'll sleep in peace. The door opened. Eduardo came in, his face red. My secretary told me you were here, Victoria. Leaving. Now. Victoria stood up slowly. You really chose her over me? A maid. I chose someone real over a lie. Eduardo held the door open. And she was never just a maid. You're the one who never saw value in people. You deserve each other. Victoria took the envelope and put it away. The poor billionaire and the lucky maid. What a fairy tale. She left, her heels striking the floor. Eduardo closed the door and turned to Rosa. Are you okay? She offered me 500,000 to lie. Rosa was still processing. To say I forged the evidence. Eduardo went pale. And you? I said no, obviously. Rosa looked him in the eyes. Did you really think I would accept? No. But 500,000. Eduardo ran a hand through his hair. A lot of people would. I'm not a lot of people. Rosa sat on the meeting table. And I need to tell you something. Something you don't know. The air in the room grew heavy. Eduardo stepped closer. What? That day at the church, I didn't go only out of honesty. Rosa took a deep breath. 6 months ago, I was cleaning the library of the mansion. You came in without realizing I was there. You were on the phone with your father. He wanted you to marry Victoria for her connections. He said love didn't matter, only business. Eduardo froze. You said no, Rosa continued, the words coming faster now. You said you would marry for love, not for a contract. That you wouldn't repeat his mistakes. And I realized you were different. That you deserved truth, not manipulation. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because it wasn't my place. I was just the maid. Rosa wiped the tears that began to form. But then I saw the emails. I saw Victoria laughing at you with Thomas. Saying you were easy to manipulate. And I couldn't stay quiet. Eduardo sat beside her. Their hands almost touching on the table. So you saved me twice. I just did what was right. No, Eduardo turned to her. You did what was hard. The right thing is easy to talk about, hard to do. A comfortable silence settled between them. Rosa felt something change in the air. Something that had been growing over the last 3 months, but neither of them had dared to name. Rosa, I need to ask you something. Eduardo held her hand. And you can tell me to go to hell if you want. You went to that church only out of honesty? Or was there another reason? Rosa's heart raced. What other reason? I don't know. You tell me. Rosa looked at their hands together. Calloused and soft touching. Different worlds meeting. I didn't want to see you unhappy. I couldn't stand the idea of you marrying someone who didn't truly love you. Why? Because the word stuck. Then came out in a whisper. Because I cared too much. Eduardo pulled her closer. Define too much. In the way maids aren't supposed to care about bosses. Rosa finally looked into his eyes. In the way people from my world aren't supposed to care about people from yours. And what if I tell you that worlds don't matter? Eduardo held her face. That these 3 months working with you were the best of my life? That I wake up thinking about you and go to sleep thinking about you? I would say you're crazy. Maybe I am. Eduardo smiled. Crazy about someone who had the courage to save my life. He kissed her. Slowly. Carefully. As if she were something precious that could break. And Rosa, for the first time in her life, let herself be loved without questioning whether she deserved it. 1 year later, Rosa was in the same corridor of that church. But this time, she wasn't stopping anyone's wedding. She was entering one. Her dress was simple compared to Victoria's that day. But it was hers. Chosen by her. Paid for with money she herself earned through honest work. And when she looked to the end of the aisle and saw Eduardo waiting, she knew it was exactly how it was meant to be. Her mother was in the front row, healthy and smiling. Her brothers beside her, dressed in new clothes they had bought themselves with their study allowance. Eduardo's family occupied the other side, and surprisingly, they accepted Rosa more easily than she had imagined. They respect courage, Eduardo had explained weeks earlier. And you showed more courage than anyone in our family has in decades. The vows were simple. No excessive pomp. Rosa promised to love him in wealth and in poverty, knowing exactly the weight of those words. Eduardo promised to honor her always, not as a billionaire honors a conquest, but as a man honors his equal. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," Rosa heard applause coming from an unexpected place. At the back of the church, she recognized faces. Colleagues from her old job. Maids who still worked in mansions around the city. People she had personally invited, even knowing that some of Eduardo's guests might frown upon it. "They are my family too," she had said when Eduardo asked about the guest list. "And I want them to see that stories can change. That destinies are not written in stone." The reception was different from anything high society was used to. Live music, yes, but also karaoke where Rosa's mother sang off-key and everyone laughed together. Expensive food, yes, but also the pastries her neighbor used to make, the ones Rosa ate every Friday in her old little room. During dinner, Eduardo stood up to give a speech. The room fell silent. "A year ago, I was going to get married in the wrong church, for the wrong reason, to the wrong person." He held Rosa's hand. A maid earning minimum wage had courage that millionaire men did not have. "She risked everything to save me. And she taught me that value is not in a bank account." Rosa felt the tears come, and this time she didn't hold them back. "Today I didn't marry a maid," Eduardo continued. "I married the bravest woman I know. A consultant at my company, yes. But above all, my partner. My equal. The person who shows me every day that honesty is worth more than gold." The applause erupted. Rosa saw people crying. She saw her former fellow maids wiping their eyes. She saw Eduardo's mother, that rigid lady of high society, nodding in approval. Later, as they danced alone in the garden while the party continued inside, Eduardo whispered, "Do you regret it? Going into that church?" "Never." Rosa rested her head on his shoulder. "But sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't had the courage. I would be married and unhappy. You would be in your little room, safe but trapped." Eduardo spun her gently. "Neither of us would be truly living." "People still talk, you know," Rosa commented. "They say I got lucky. That I landed a billionaire. And what do you think?" "I think courage creates luck." Rosa smiled. That staying quiet out of fear never changed anyone's destiny. And that sometimes, doing the right thing takes you to places you never imagined possible. Eduardo stopped dancing and looked deep into her eyes. "Do you know what I discovered? I'm the one who got lucky. Lucky to have an honest maid. Lucky that she was brave. Lucky to finally see what really matters." Inside the party, Rosa's mother was singing karaoke again, now accompanied by Eduardo's father. Different worlds mixing. Barriers falling. And Rosa realized that this was the true happy ending. Not her becoming a princess, but everyone discovering that titles never mattered. "Are you going back to the company on Monday?" Eduardo asked. "Of course. Someone needs to make sure you don't get fooled again." Rosa laughed. "And I'm analyzing that new contract. There's something strange in Clause 7. Always working." Eduardo shook his head, but he was smiling. "Always protecting," Rosa corrected. "That's what we do for those we love." The music changed. Something softer. Eduardo pulled her closer and they danced in silence, two worlds that had become one. A story that began with courage and ended with love. Rosa looked up at the stars above and thought of all the people who still lived in cramped little rooms. Who cleaned other people's houses. Who had truths stuck in their throats out of fear. And she wished that each one would find their own courage. Because in the end, it wasn't Eduardo's money that changed her life. It was her own choice not to stay quiet. Courage doesn't guarantee a happy ending. But silence guarantees that nothing will change. And sometimes, a single act of bravery can rewrite everything. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment saying what you thought, whether you would have had the same courage as Rosa, and which city or country you're watching from. Your opinion matters a lot to us. Because just as Rosa discovered, every voice deserves to be heard. And every act of courage deserves to be